We did this once, didn't we? Welcome into the Voice of College Football on a Friday night. Take two. All right. For those of you who are watching, for maybe on the rewatch squad, you are unaware that I rambled for 25 minutes with no sound. Only myself and God knows what I said for 25 minutes. We are the only two who know what I rambled on about. That rarely happens. I got on here. I had people calling. I had 3 or 4 phone callers. And I still said, hey, you got to hang on because I got a lot to ramble on about. I got a lot to say. And I went to town for 25 minutes and no sound. So take two with the Voice of College Football. We appreciate you being here. And thank you so much for the 50 or 60 people that were online with us for 25 minutes with no sound and for coming back. And now we've hopefully got sound. Maybe this will teach me to check the chat a little bit sooner, but I was on a roll and I had much to say. Now, unfortunately, I don't think I've got it in me, or maybe fortunate for you, most likely, that you don't need to hear about that issue and that issue and that issue and me railing on that person and that and that and that. Just don't have it in me to do it again. Maybe it'll come out tomorrow or the next day or 3 years from now, but it's not coming out right now. We will skip right to college football. Welcome in, of course. If you're catching us for the first time, my name's Mark, the Voice of College Football, and we welcome your comments and questions there, of course, and your contributions. And of course, we also want you in here to give us a call on the phone lines. And again, I've got to repost the link. So my apologies, especially to those people that called already. But you're going to have to grab a new, fresh link here. So please join the show. The Amazon link's in the description section of all the videos. Please grab it. I had somebody very close to me yesterday say, Mark, Amazon link. My company wants to buy stuff on Amazon. I need that link. Okay, got the link. Are you sure we're going to be able to jump in that link and be able to still use our Amazon Prime and with the company, account, and then also get into your link, and so it counts for you? And I said, I believe so. I think it all works. All right, so we appreciate you being here. So, man, yeah, bypass all the stuff that I ranted about. It'll just have to come out another day. Rarely do I rant like that. I will say that I will rant about this. I had yet to get to this. So there's all sorts of insanity out there in this country that's pathetic and despicable and evil and all those other things that I rail on. If you follow me on Twitter from time to time, I try to be reserved. So let's just know what those things are. It should be obvious to any logical, reasonable person. Okay. Yeah. I think that percentage in this country is dwindling by the day, especially based on how we're bringing up our young people. All right. Anyway, but we'll keep this to college football because there's enough insanity and brutality and just morons out there concerning college football. So we'll keep it to college football, of course. And maybe this is going to be the birth of a new discussion piece here at the Voice of College Football, where I take the idiocy I see out there, instead of ignoring it, instead of bashing them directly, which I will continue to do. I will continue to put those people in their place. We'll bring it on here and make this kind of a segment of the show, because there's certainly, I'm not a big social media guy. I would like to be less of a social media guy. But hey, it's the business. I got to be on there. I got to be on Twitter and Facebook and all these other things. I'm not really on Facebook, but we got to get there. We've got our Voice of College Football Facebook page, but it's rather dormant at this time. So we'll get there. But look at this. Look at this gem. Look at this gem. Oh, man, I've got so many things saved here. Good Lord. Yeah, let's go to this. Okay, so I am noting, and as I told all of you during the first take that is now wiped out, I deleted it because no sound. Happy Easter, everyone. Happy Good Friday here on this very sacred and sanctimonious occasion. Of course, it's Good Friday, when our Lord and Savior was crucified. And then, of course, Resurrection Sunday is on Sunday. Okay. So I was just letting everyone know, of course, I was retweeting something that was presented by our buddy Steve Dace. God bless him. I said, simply the most important weekend in history. I was not talking about this weekend per se. I was talking about the original, but of course, the commemoration, the celebration, of course, but death, burial, and resurrection for you and me. So that was mine, and we will get this to college football here. And so not only is our buddy Go Blue, I don't know if you want to call this blasphemous. Maybe it's just his poor sense of humor, or maybe this is what he truly believes. But so he makes a statement here. He says, and maybe Go Blue watches us. Maybe he does not. I have no idea who Go Blue is, except a Michigan fan. So he says, this is why the Buckeyes can't beat us anymore. The most important weekend is the game, Mark. It just means more to us. Seriously. This is the response. So I will speak very briefly to the obvious, which I just alluded to, which is a pathetic comment in light of what I was celebrating, commemorating, which is the most important event in history. So that's pathetic in and of itself. So let's get past that, because I don't need to say anything more there. So, but just from the Ohio State, Michigan portion of things. Okay. This knucklehead says, this is why the Buckeyes can't beat us anymore. The most important weekend is the game, Mark. It just means more to us. So I expect Michigan fans, yes, I expect all of you Michigan fans to be gloating, to be celebratory. You are the Big Ten champions. You are the defending two-time Big Ten champions. You are the winner of the game 2 consecutive years. But as that left my mouth just now, that 2 consecutive years that seemed so puny and it seemed so insignificant in comparison to, and that's all you can do is obviously win the games now. And these are the 2 most important games now, not historically, not in the history of the series, but the most important games right now are the most recent games, and Michigan is 2-0. And if anybody has been level-headed and has been unbiased, to use a term that we'll get to that was used a few times last night, it's impossible to be unbiased. Let's correct everybody across the board. Impossible. You cannot be unbiased. There is nobody who is completely 100% unbiased. To this point, if I flipped on an Air Force Fresno State game, I don't care who won. I don't care. I have no rooting interest. But you know what? I still have a bias. Like if you said, who's the best player on the field? Who's the best team? Who's doing the best job coaching? Well, I would have no bias toward either one in regards to a rooting interest, but I would still have bias because we all have, based on our knowledge base, based on how we acquired that knowledge, based on what we've watched, what we've experienced, we have a bias. So something inherent that I've experienced in my background would cause me to see that game a certain way. That's a bias. Okay, so let's understand everybody has a bias. All right. I just do a better job than anybody on the internet, I believe. This is what I'm told, and this is what I strive for, to eliminate mine as much as possible. That's why I can sit here in 2016, and I'm sure none of you were here in 2016 at the Voice of College Football, but I could sit here and say Penn State should be in the college football playoff and not my beloved Ohio State Buckeyes. They should not be in the playoff. Penn State got ripped off. That's why I can do that, and you see nobody else doing that. Okay. But when it comes to this, Joker, all right, I say, okay. And if he's trolling, he's doing a nice job because it got to me. 4-17 when it got to me for like 3 seconds. You know what I mean? It got to me. I could care less, but it was fun to respond to. Yes, you're 4-17 this century. Yes, quite the elite performance. Great job. Try being good for longer than 2 years. Michigan, can you be good for longer than 2 years? Try that. Give it a shot. Be good for more than 2 years. You're at 2 years. Can you keep it going? We don't know at this point. It looks good right now. It looked good in 2016 too. It looked good at other times too. I know it seems impossible, but keep working on it. That was my response. So Michigan fans, I'm sure you love me at this point. But if you've been watching and listening for long enough, you know, just being fair. Just being fair. I will make one other comment, and then we will get to our 2 callers here. Please join us on the phone lines right here at the Voice of College Football. So last night, I left the final hour of the show, whatever the time limit was, to our young gun friends. So we had Jeffrey, we had Jackson, we had the real MVP, and I believe we had Will. Yes, we had Will for a time, but I think it was primarily the other 3. Am I missing someone? I apologize if I am. And they disappointed me greatly. I got to say. Sorry, disappointed me greatly, guys. I thought I had taught you better. They're on here just spewing stuff about just subjective analysis to place playoff teams out of thin air because Bama's got to be the best. So throw them in. I thought I had taught you better. I'm still proud of you. Nobody's perfect. But we will need to go through another level of training. The real MVP, yes, we will have to continue. We may have to drop you back to 101. No, not you guys are well advanced past 101. No, you guys are great. You're phenomenal. Everybody has an opinion, and I understand your opinion. So there's a difference between, and we'll get to the calls in 2 seconds. There's a difference between, at least for me, there's a difference between somebody starting a debate and, okay, I don't agree with you, but I get your point. It's logical. It makes sense. So I understand where you're coming from. You're an intelligent person in this area, and we can exchange ideas. I just don't agree with you. But this is a debate. This is reasonable to debate this. Then there's other people that it's just like I throw my hands up, and part of me, half of me wants to say, Mark, just drill them into the ground. And then part of me wants to say, I'm not dealing with you because it's ludicrous what you're bringing to the table. It's moronic. It's not even worth. It would be like if somebody called and said, Joe Flacco is the greatest quarterback of all time. You know, it's not debatable. So why do we can't start? It's a waste of time. Now, if somebody calls up and says, if they want to say Johnny Unitas is the greatest quarterback of all time, then we've got this era issue, and we can dive into that. But Johnny Unitas at one point was considered the greatest quarterback of all time. Now, no one living today, very few would consider him the greatest of all time now, but I can accept that debate. All right. We will take the calls because those people have been waiting very patiently, even though I had two other things to hit on. So we will get to those, one including the Pac-12 TV deal expected later this summer or spring, according to Pete Thamel of ESPN. We just did a live show. Check it out with Tony Altamore last night, talking about primarily SMU and San Diego State joining the Pac-12. The deal expected later this spring or summer. Why it's delayed, I don't know, but good news for the Pac-12, at least that they've got a deal. Colvarks is joining us here at the Voice of College Football. Colvarks, thanks so much for being here. Hello, Colvarks. We would love to hear from you. Hello.
Hello?
Yes, Colvarks.
Hi. Sorry about that.
No,
had
no
my
problem.
audio thing on the wrong thing, but
oh,
how are you
I know what you mean.
How are you
You've
today?
been there. What's going on tonight?
Not much. So I mostly just had a quick question. I know you've got other people that have been waiting. So, and it has to do with this realignment thing. So, let's just say they, the Pac-12, they don't get their media deal together. I'm not saying this is going to happen, but you have those 4 quarter schools, both to the Big 12, and you have Oregon, Washington go to the Big 10. Again, I'm not saying I think that's going to happen, but if that were to happen, do you think the SEC would follow suit and try and pull some strings to get some ACC teams?
Yeah, this is basically what I think about the SEC and Big Ten expansion. I think there are two general principles that would drive a move by either conference. One being their assessment of the field. For example, the Big Ten looking at Washington and Oregon and saying, do they add value? And when I say value, I'm not just talking about, okay, the TV deal is $85 million per school, and then we can go to Fox and CBS and NBC, and they're going to give us X number of dollars more, and then we divide it again, and now it goes from 85 million to 87.3 million. That's part of it, but I don't think that that's the complete assessment. They could possibly come back, the Big Ten, for example, and say, Washington, Oregon, we're going to take them on, and it's going to drop our per team, per school revenue share by 3 million, but that's not a big deal. We get territory, we get Seattle, etc. We get brands. This is all better, and they judge it to be an increase. So I think the SEC or the Big Ten will move if they assess value, or the other component that you just alluded to would be if the Big Ten adds value to that extent, and the SEC, even if they don't see the type of value that they would normally go after, but they see it, the Big Ten slipping past them, maybe jumping to 20. Let's say the Big Ten gets Notre Dame and gets Stanford and Cal as well, and they're like 20 or 22, and the SEC's at 16. Even if it's going to cost them some per school money, yeah, the SEC, I would think that there's going to be a possible counter punch to this going forward.
So, like, if the Big Ten grabbed Oregon, Washington, I know there's been talks about how Florida State and Clemson are obviously unhappy in the ACC. Do you think there's a way for them to get out of that massive media contract and try to jump ship?
Most people say no. Grant of rights people say no, that it's such an ironclad contract. However, we do know that there has to be some cooperation. So I believe the number is 6 or 8 of the schools in the ACC, either 6 or 8 schools in the ACC, if they can get cooperation together and say, we are unilaterally leaving the conference, then the grant of rights is crippled to an extent. I don't know if it completely dissolves them or gets them out of the contract, but that they need that kind of cooperation.
Yeah, so it's not as simple as they could just, like, there's no way for them to just fight in court and get out of it.
Oh, there is a way. Sure, they can I don't know how long that court case would take and the type of money that it would take for, let's say, Florida State just on their own.
Yeah.
Or Florida State and Clemson said, we're leaving. And the ACC said, you can't. And they said, well, your contract. So one of the angles to this, from what I understand, is that they could claim you have not been reputable and competent in keeping our league competitive with the rest of college football. So we have a leg to stand on to sue you to force, departure from the league. But that sounds like a messy court case that would cost a whole lot of money.
Yeah. So I was just curious if there's if the SEC would find going through that effort worth it, have the Big Ten expand to 18. And maybe that's not Oregon, Washington. Maybe that's, West Virginia, Notre Dame, or that's Kansas, Iowa State. Pick any two. Would the SEC go through that length to grab Florida State and Clemson?
Yeah, I can't imagine the Big Ten's going after Iowa State and Kansas.
No,
but it makes sense geographically. You've got the basketball power. You've got a rivalry mate for Iowa. I understand from a sports standpoint, there's some, but from a market standpoint and brand, and they don't need to deal with those teams. I think if they were going to go to the other side of the country, they're going after, like, if I'm the Big Ten, I'm on record as saying I would go after Florida State and Miami.
Yeah, I think that'd make a lot more sense, but you're running into that same issue there.
Yeah, exactly. I'm either going Florida State, Miami, or I'm going Florida State, Miami, Clemson, North Carolina, or Clemson, Georgia Tech. And I know people laugh at Georgia Tech, but it's not been more than a couple of years since they can win in football, and they got a massive, great school and a massive TV market and recruiting base. I think the reason the Big Ten should go to Florida is then they cover the basically corners of the map. But more importantly, to me, Colvarks, is that the Big Ten checks off every box, every meaningful box. They've got everything going for them. They got the best TV contract. They got arguably the most fans. They've got in the seats and also on TV. Check, check, check. The most money, the greatest institution. But where are they getting players? They've got a shortage on players. And if they go to Florida and bring in those two schools, then it's going to be much easier for not just Ohio State, who already goes to Florida, but Michigan, Penn State, to get those kind of players out of Florida, I would think.
Yeah. So I was just curious about that, depending on how these dominoes fall, if, there's a chance that the SEC would try to fight that, and so that was my big question. But I know you've got other people waiting, so I won't take any more of your time. But I thank you for answering my question.
Thanks, Colbarks. All right, we'll keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. I see some of our faithful Michigan fans there in the chat, probably hating me right now over me blasting our Go Blue guy on Twitter there. But we do have Robert on the line. We want to talk some college football with Robert. What's going on, sir? We cannot hear you. I don't know if there's an issue there. For once, I don't think
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Gotcha.
Yeah, I actually had it mute.
Oh, I've done it before.
Yeah.
Sure. What's up?
Yeah, which took me a few seconds because I can see the little red light. That was the reason. I'm like, oh. Yeah. I was more curious what your thoughts are on all these TV networks that were throwing in for the Pac-12 deal.
So I did not read this article yet, but if you're talking about ESPN, Fox, Apple, and Amazon, is there?
They were also throwing in the CW also, and they were also throwing Ion TV. Also, they were throwing in. I was like,
well, yeah, Ion. I heard about them a couple months ago. Yeah.
Yeah. The newest story was also threw in the CW network on top of it.
Wow, I haven't thought about them or come across them for years and years and years.
Yeah, and when I heard of it, I'm like, when I was hearing the other commentators, I'm like, the CW sounds very appealing because they have the free app and everything, but everything else is like they're connected with, of course, everybody knows that, and it's like that I did all my research on them, and it's like the only failure I can see is their news department. That's it that I can find. I'm like comparing to other media sports would host college sports. I'm like they're almost the best one because none of them have major issues compared to the rest that we've been talking about for the last 3 months.
So at times I try to think like a younger guy because I figure, okay, I'm the old guy, get off my lawn, all that business. And, I need to try to think what an athlete thinks, or a 22-year-old or whatever. But when it comes to this, most of the consumers of college football are us.
Of course.
We are in the prime bracket of, like 35, 65 in that range.
Exactly.
We run this in regards to watching the games. That said, so my initial thought is, because I'm thinking of my viewing habits, when Notre Dame's playing on NBC, this seems ridiculous, but I often forget about Notre Dame being on NBC. Not that I think about that conceptually, that they're on NBC, but during the middle of a Saturday afternoon, and I'm the guy that's tracking every game, looking at everything. And just because it's the one game, it's on NBC, it's at an odd time, at least for that structure of game kickoffs. I sometimes will see this Notre Dame score go by at 4:30 in the afternoon, be like, oh yeah, they're in North Carolina. That's a decent game. They're in the third quarter. I forget about them.
Oh yeah.
So, and we all remember that like the NCAA basketball tournament, what was it, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, that the men's tournament introduced us to True TV, and people were like,
oh yeah,
where's that? And so we all had to figure out where that was.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I remember that everybody was scratching their heads, and I'm like, 7 years ago, I'm like, I know about it. I was raised in Pennsylvania at the time. I'm like, but I'm down in Texas now. It's like, I don't know where to tell you where to find it on your network.
Yeah. So what I'm getting to, the problem for people that are a little bit more traditional is that you kind of have this Saturday afternoon, ESPN, ESPN2, Fox, FS1, and if you have to process with the Pac-12 games already being an afterthought for a lot of people,
exactly.
CW, just to make it that difficult, the hardcore fans will always find it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But and if they've got a great game, I guess
it has to be marketed very heavily.
Oh man.
Same with the USA Network. I was like, when they mentioned that, I'm like, how they're going to market it? Are you going to market it on Monday, like on Mondays when you have a lot of viewership coming to watch wrestling, or what?
Yeah, it's difficult to pull people somewhere where they're not accustomed to going for that product. It's like I brought up to Tony last night, and I tweeted this, and I said this during a couple different videos. The thing that I worry about the Pac-12 is that they're negotiating, okay, with ESPN and Fox, they have plenty of football inventory. They still would love to have the Pac-12. There's still good product there for them to put, especially late night, but they don't need the Pac-12.
Oh yeah.
The Pac-12 needs them. Now, when you go to Apple and Amazon, they're just barely getting into the sports realm. Like, again, they can continue their business. Their business is not sports and go on their merry way. They obviously have an interest in getting into Pac-12 football, but if it doesn't happen, it's probably not a big deal. The Pac-12 needs them.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's not a good place to be.
Yeah, and if you have an Amazon, if people were even complaining about when the NFL had their Thursday night game, there was always problems with it too, with Amazon TV. Same thing. It's like, I pay attention to multiple things to find out a good idea of what we're looking at on this.
I'm a pretty big NFL fan. I used to be an obnoxious, like crazy NFL fan that followed every transaction, but now I just want to watch football on Sunday afternoon. And I got to tell you, I loved the Thursday night games and watched every one of them. But this past season, I just kind of let it go. I didn't think about it. It was always like 11 o'clock at night where I was like, oh yeah, there's an NFL game. Well, I'll catch the highlights. They would show the replay on the NFL Network. I never gave any effort to grabbing Amazon to get the NFL games. So I think the Pac-12 really needs to get an ESPN Saturday night late night window, or a Fox late night window, or Thursday night. I posted a video. I had my recommendations, and I'm not saying that I'm a genius at this by any stretch, but I had my suggestions.
Yeah, and the truth for my case, if ESPN offers, is going to be a low ball offer no matter what, because they're struggling.
I think so too.
Yeah, because with Disney, it's like they put themselves so much behind the revolver that they have the barrels pointed at their head right now because of all the things they went bust this year and before, with different things from Marvel, everything. It's like, I knew this like the beginning of the past season. I was telling Golden Blue do this, and like when he was saying maybe the ACC can go back and negotiate a bigger deal with their television contract. I'm like, most likely, if they go and try to get a higher amount, they're going to try saying, we need to cut your funding to you. The deal, it's like, and he was like, whoa, what? Yeah, you have to pay attention more than just what college football brings to that network in general. And you have to see who owns them too. Sometimes they're not owned by themselves. They're owned by a bigger entity.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. And it's about some of these lesser networks, like you mentioned, CW and Ion. I got to think their potential in being a major factor later is from a streaming standpoint.
With the CW, it's also another reason is because of syndication. They're stopping doing that, and they're going to have to pay more for that. That's the reason why they want to go into live sports.
Okay.
That's what I also heard from a lot of them. And I'm like, that does make sense because you can make more money that way than paying for syndication of these different shows and everything.
Absolutely.
But I think they're a little late to the game.
Yeah.
On that.
Right, Robert. Anything else you want to hit on?
No, nothing really. I just wanted to see what your impression was, what I've been looking up for the last couple months on this.
Yeah, I am not in either camp in terms of, you hear the traditionalists say, oh my word, all this streaming, it's not going to work. People aren't going to find it. And then you got your people that say, hey, it's the future. People will find it.
In my case, I'm more concerned, is it really going to help? Because you don't want to tie yourself to a group that actually is suffering right now either.
Yes.
You don't want to make that mistake either. Yeah.
It
doesn't matter it doesn't matter if you're going streaming or just linear cable. It's still both ways. You want to be on a stable network that is guaranteed the contract you say signed with them will fulfill to the end of the contract.
And I'm not going to say it's going to help much, but if you look at the way these contracts are structured now, because you see it in the promotion, it's obvious that back in the old days, ESPN wouldn't say a word about what was on Fox and vice versa. They would never promote, but it's been obvious in recent contracts that the conferences have said, you promote our games. So they'll throw up, during the NFL games, they'll throw up this week, you see this on CBS, you see this on, and they'll just promote the other games because they've been forced by the NFL and they've been forced by the college football conferences. So that's where ESPN becomes a major component for the Pac-12.
Mark, what you just said right there reminds me of one thing. Back in the territory days, they didn't talk about the other territories. Concentrate on that. It's the same thing with television. It's the same thing you just said. I'm also a wrestling fan, so I understand. Even they did that, and we noticed in the '90s they did that. They broke that no-no. Now you can't. You can say almost whatever you want again.
Yeah,
and it's the same thing now with the sports media.
Okay, Robert, I appreciate you calling.
Yeah, I appreciate meeting you, actually talking to you face to face instead of over anywhere else.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for being here. Have a good night. What's your dog's name?
Miss Tub-Tubs.
Oh, very nice. My son is a dog trainer, so we love dogs, and that's awesome. Yeah,
Golden Blue dude loved seeing her because she was always like my co-star every time I come on his live streams.
Nice.
So it was like it's almost like every time every time I would come on, they expect her to come on too.
All right. Well, have a good night.
Same to you.
Thanks for calling. All right, we will keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. We also have John Tell here with CW says San Diego State, Fresno State are mandatory. Okay, well, we know San Diego State is right there and ready to roll. And according to a number of sources, including our guy, Tony Altamore, San Diego State is a near certainty. SMU is supposed to be the other, but they're saying Fresno State. Interesting. All right, we go to Jake on the line. Jake, what's going on tonight?
Mark, how's it going?
I'm good. What you got going tonight?
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Oh, well, I appreciate it. I like to hear from new callers. Love it.
Oh, I'm a Nebraskan, so I'm just here working on a tractor right now. It's kind of getting dark.
Of course you are. That's what you guys do out there.
What's that?
That's what you guys do out there.
Yeah. Work. Some of us anyway.
Yeah.
Nope. Long-time Nebraska fan. I just got one question for you.
Okay.
I've heard you talk recently about like recent term success in the Big Ten, and especially the Big Ten West. And you're pretty high on Wisconsin, right?
I am.
What would you foresee? I know the divisions and everything are going away, but in 15 years, what would you see the big dogs in the Big Ten look like? If you had to pick your 4 best teams, what do you think they are?
Well, if this makes sense to you, Jake, I have confidence in Wisconsin's floor, but I believe Nebraska's got a higher ceiling. I think that's pretty obvious. They've got a higher ceiling. We've seen it. And a lot of people would say, well, that was ancient history. Yes and no, but that's still a ceiling. It's still been attainable, and it's produced in the past. And even in the last 12 to 14 years at the end of their Big 12 run, they were playing in conference championship games and showing that they could play the best team in the conference, one of the best teams in the country, down to the wire. Sorry to bring up bad memories, but and with the NIL, Nebraska apparently, by all indications, is on top of that.
Yeah, I saw a thing the other day that said that they might be top 10. Do you think that's accurate?
Yeah.
I think so. It is. Yeah. No, the one thing Nebraska has, the big thing that they got going for them is they're, the only show in the state for the most part. No NFL team, no other college. I think that helps them quite a bit, for sure.
You folks in Nebraska, Jake, I got to tell you, you have a legitimate, a lot of people brag about different things, and I kind of have to talk them down to say, well, this is going on here and there. But the place where you're unique is we've seen Florida State down. We've seen all sorts of different teams down, USC and others. And what do we see? We see empty seats. Even in places like Tennessee, we don't see that in Nebraska. And I know that there's been a little cooking of the books at times to try to keep that sellout streak and effectively keep it alive. But that's only been a couple times that they've needed to do that. It's legit.
Yeah, well, I don't know. For the most part, there's some really rich people that buy tickets, and I know that. I don't know. The sellout streak isn't really, it's good on paper. But I don't think a true Nebraska fan really cares that much about it. You know what I mean? Everybody knows, you go on Twitter and everything else. Everybody kind of makes fun of it for the most part because we've had these donors that pay like the last 1,000 tickets or whatever like that.
Yeah, well, for me, it's more about not the technicality of the streak, but that it shows that the place is nearly packed all the time.
Yeah. No, I understand that. Yeah. What game was it last year? Texas A&M. They're playing kind of a nobody, and it was kind of a rainy day, and they had and they had like 5,000 people on the stands. Yeah, that was.
Now, if you looked up the attendance on that game, it would say 94,000 or something.
Yeah.
And
then you saw the real picture.
Were atrocious. Yeah.
Well, what do you think of Matt Rule, Mark?
So here is where I am with Matt Rule. I love what he did at Temple. I love what he did at Baylor. I think those are legitimate, proof of concept examples of take over a program. It's awful. Turn it around in a very short period of time, both times. The NFL, I don't really count that because I think there are things that don't relate. We've seen all sorts of excellent college football coaches fail in the NFL. And, It's just the NFL chews up almost everyone. So I'm not that concerned there. I would say, though, I have not seen Matt Rule or his program develop a really good quarterback. And I mean a really good quarterback. Sure, they were serviceable. They won games. Of course they did. Charlie Brewer won games. But so there's that. I thought Fickle was a better hire, but I put Rule, in the top 2 or 3 this offseason.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. I think if you looked at it, before the season even started, I think Luke Fickle was, if you had a coach that was available, Luke Fickle might have been number 1 on the board. Would you agree that?
Oh yeah, he was my number 1 guy. Yes.
Yeah. I don't know that. If you look back at the history of Nebraska, you look back to the Tommy Frazier and stuff, they've kind of done stuff, differently. I couldn't even tell you the last quarterback from Nebraska that was drafted in the class. You might have to go back to like the 70s or something like that. It could be a way that, I don't know, maybe it just fits Nebraska the way maybe you don't need a star-studded quarterback to be a top 10 team. Would you agree that anymore? Well, I don't know. Today's day and age of football, you about need a good quarterback, don't
yeah.
you?
So there's your answer. Your answer is technically no. Like if you are just have some insane, level of play at every other position, technically no. But it's obviously more of a quarterback's game than at any other time in history. So there's less margin of error by far.
What if Nebraska gets their hands on Dylan Raiola, though?
Well, so anytime a program, especially one that's struggling and trying to get back to where they were, gets that kind of signing, it's obviously all about, number one, the talent, just getting that guy and what the production can be, especially at that position. But it's also what he can bring directly. He's going to get his buddies to come play with him, whether that's 4 dudes,
Sure.
5, 6, whatever it is. But then it's also the perception. It's the perception of other recruits saying, wow, if he decided and then these other guys decided, then you get like 2 layers of benefit there.
I 100% agree with that. I think, Dylan Raiola is obviously one thing. He's the number 1 player, according to 247 and Rivals and all these things. But I think the big kicker there is not necessarily him. It's the people he could bring with him.
Mm-hmm.
There. Nebraska is not going to be good if they got a good quarterback and a crappy offensive line for the most part. They're going to need those pieces along with it. I got one more thing for you, Mark, to think about Wisconsin. I don't know why Wisconsin's on my brain right now. Do you think the switch in the style of football that Wisconsin's going to have may hurt them?
Oh, sure. It's a gamble. It's a calculated gamble, but sure, it's a gamble.
Yep. I don't know. How Wisconsin's had a good defense. Well, I don't know. What would you say they average over the last 5 years? Probably a top 15 defense.
Yes.
Do you think
easily?
Do you think that the air raid style may hurt the defense?
Yes. There's the other risk you run because you hurt them during the game with, of course, sending them onto the field potentially because you just went 3 plays and 75 yards in 42 seconds, or you went 3 and out.
Oh, true. Yeah.
So one or the other, they're on the field.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why a lot of those style offenses say, hey, we got to give a break to the defense. Therefore, we're going to run the clock for the first series until we get a first down. And then we're going to put the tempo in. Then we're going to go for it. We got to get that first down. Otherwise, we need to give them a blow. So you see the offense with a smart coach actually try to mitigate that to a certain extent. But it's also the practice. It's the practice reps against that offense that's going to soften up potentially, though, that will make them better at playing those kind of offenses. But if Michigan comes to town and wants to punch them in the nose, then they're not really going to be built for that.
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point on the deal. Yeah, I don't know. Just thinking about that thing, and I don't know if it's related or not, but kind of gave me flashbacks to the Nebraska deal where, Nebraska fired Frank Solich for the new face and everything and ended up, halfway kind of ruining their program. I'm not saying Luke Fickell is going to do that by any means, but it's just going to be interesting to see how it works out.
Yeah, and I think he's going to try to do both. I think that they're still going to have a power running game to an extent.
Yeah, for sure.
They will.
Yeah, Braylon Allen, they'll find a spot for him, I'm sure.
Yes, got to. That guy's a beast. Yep.
Yeah. Well, Mark, that's all I had. Thank you very much for taking my call.
All right, Jake. Appreciate you calling.
Yep. Take care.
Have a good night. All right. Thanks for being here at the Voice of College Football, everyone. Joey, Penn State fan. We need Penn State fans. We don't have that many Penn State fans. We got a Penn State channel. We got about 500 subs over there, and we produce videos and nobody watches them. So I just don't think there's many people over there that are Penn State fans. The Penn State people have not found us here at the Voice of College Football. They are one of those pockets of fans that, if we have any other Penn State fans besides Joey, get us some Penn State fans, but we appreciate the contribution. Thank you so much for that, Joey. Let's talk to Will next. Will, what's going on tonight?
What's up, Mark?
What is up?
So I wanted to discuss Irish Breakdown did the top 10 college football programs in the country, and I just think it would be fun if you reacted to it.
Oh, okay. Do you know that we're going to release ours?
I know. So
okay.
we can compare it afterwards too, but
okay. Well, if
you don't want to do it this now, it's okay. And we can just talk Notre Dame.
I'll take my pot shot at Brian Driscoll. We love Brian. Brian's amazing at what he does, but of course we're going to rank all 133, but no.
So he has Utah at 10.
Okay.
Oklahoma at 9.
Okay.
Penn State at 8.
Okay.
LSU at 7.
All
Michigan at 6.
Okay.
Notre Dame at 5.
Okay.
Clemson at 4. Ohio State at 3. Alabama at 2. And Georgia at 1.
Okay. So he's trying to balance out, and I believe I'm going this direction as well. He's trying to balance out like right this second.
Yeah, that's what he did in the article.
But also, you got to take into consideration what happened 2 years ago, because it may be, we're not ranking them based on the last game played. There is some context that has to be given. Obviously, the easiest one to attack is where Michigan's 6, Ohio State's 3. There's the obvious one to attack. I don't necessarily disagree with that. Well, we'll find out if I completely disagree with that. I don't have them ranked 3 and 6, but that's an obvious one to say, wait a minute. Michigan won the game the last 2 years by 2 and 3 scores, and they won the Big Ten championship, and I don't have to run down the obvious resume difference. But if you take in totality everything that's going on, there is still a solid argument to say Ohio State's still the better program. And not say, that's 2 games played. I don't know if Michigan plays Georgia we'll never know. Michigan fans can say, and they can be justified. I agree with them. They can say all what they want because they won the games. But against Georgia, I just don't know if Michigan has that kind of ability to put on that kind of performance. And the recruiting, if we were having a typical Michigan versus Ohio State recruiting off season, then again, 3 versus 6 could be better justified, but Michigan's killing it right now.
I have a feeling, I don't want to make Wolverine fans angry at me, but I am worried for Michigan and Notre Dame that we're going to lose guys again to NIL like we did at the end last time.
Yeah. I would truly hope somebody at some point is going to do something about that and bring this, because both of those schools have really strong NIL collectives, but they're doing it by the rules. And therefore it just means as I take it, they're having those conversations, but they're basically just conversations to say, hey, this is what we have available. Once we sign you, you're enrolled. Hey, we'll get you connected with the right people and it's all going to be good. But compare that to sign here $1.2 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just sad, but it's the way college football is right now. I mean, that's true. I mean, I don't know if Michigan's paying players to go to their school. Like Notre Dame has NIL in order too, but they aren't paying players. They aren't writing the blank checks that Oregon and Miami are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a difference between the way it's being conducted.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't know. Like my whole this past couple of years, like I've just been trying to figure out how Notre Dame can get to that top 3 level, and it always just seems like we have a weakness at one area. Like this year, it's going to be that probably linebackers and defensive line, and maybe safeties. But I'm a little more hopeful on the safeties. But just really hoping that I don't know. Like I just want to win 2 out of the 3 big games this year between the USC, Ohio State, and Clemson away. But
well, Ohio State can tell you and show you that you don't have to be great at everything to be elite. Mm-hmm. They are probably the one team out of the elites that has been the most vulnerable in certain spots, but they've also been arguably the most excellent at other spots to make up for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I mean, I know Ohio State generally has like the higher recruited guys because of the academic restrictions. So I always feel like we kind of have to be solid at everything. But I mean, I feel like since Michigan's closer to our level in terms of talent and they beat Ohio State, like I felt like if we had a better quarterback situation at the beginning of last season, I felt like that was a very winnable game for Notre Dame. I mean, Ohio State didn't set the world on fire offensively in that game, and our defense played well. I felt like if we had Sam and last year, do you think we win that game in Columbus or
Sam and who?
If we had Sam Hartman at quarterback in the game in
Sam
Columbus,
Hartman.
Yeah, I feel like we won that game.
Yeah, you can make that argument. I can't make that call, but sure, I could see it. I wouldn't be surprised.
So that's what gives me hope in the Ohio State game. Sure. And especially their offense is going to have a lot. Your offense, I guess, because I'm talking to a Ohio State fan, is going to have a lot of question marks. So I feel like that's the winnable variant. I feel like we can win that game.
Oh, you think that's the most winnable of the 3?
No. I said we can win. It's winnable. Yeah. I'm not saying it's the most winnable.
You can win any one of those 3 games. You can win them all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have to do better, have better ball control, not punt as much against USC, and then the Clemson game. I don't know what Clemson's offense is going to look like, but
you've got a better throwing quarterback than what you've had since Brady
Jimmy Clausen.
Jimmy Clausen, yeah, guys that were drafted. Yeah, I really like Sam Hartman. Now I don't think he's like, from a talent perspective, like otherworldly, but he's really, really good, top notch. Yes, he's a
Troy. I'm looking at the chat, and of course, the Buckeye fans are saying their piece. Troy, I think our wide receivers are better than they've been in a long time. Like I really like what Chancey Stuckey's been doing with the wide receiver development. So I'm pretty happy with I'm not really worried about that.
Our buddy Kevin Noon on our Buckeye show does not think it's going to be a game. He thinks Ohio State's going to blow out Notre Dame. I don't see it myself. It's going to be a great game.
I respectively disagree with that.
Yeah, I think it'll be a great game. I think Ohio State's better, but they're going to be playing on the road, and they're going to be playing with a first-time quarterback. Now, I know he's going to have 3 games under his belt at that point. That's going to help considerably. But it's going to be his first experience in a hostile environment to that degree. I don't think necessarily Bloomington, Indiana is going to, prep him for that game.
There might be more Buckeye fans there than Hoosier fans.
And they won't fill the stadium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I I was happy about when I was at the Clemson game how good the atmosphere was in Notre Dame Stadium. Like the day games at Notre Dame Stadium are so rough in terms of atmosphere. It's not great. Like it's a lot of businessmen from the Chicago area just go and meet. But the night games are actually great environment. So I think hopefully that definitely gives Notre Dame 3 points at least.
Do we know that it's going to be a night game?
I mean, I'm assuming it's going to be a night game.
They considered that last year was ABC since it was in Columbus, but this is a NBC. Okay. All right. Yeah, this is Notre Dame. It's NBC. So, yeah, they'll probably do like their 7:30 game. Yeah. I can see that instead of like a 2:30. Yeah. It's
usually there's 2 7:30 games on NBC. And I think I'll be surprised if they aren't the USC. It's always the USC or Stanford games a night game and then one other game. So those should be the 2 night games. And I'll be very upset if they aren't.
What was it last year? Clemson.
It was Clemson and Stanford. Yeah.
Let's get some revenge on Stanford this year, Will.
I still can't believe we lost that game.
I have no recollection of that game. I don't know if I even watched much
the
of it.
Offense was really
go
hard
on
to watch.
YouTube as soon as we get done here and watch that just to think, what in the world happened?
That was the worst Notre Dame offensive performance I think I've seen in a long time. Mm-hmm.
All right, Will. Anything else?
Nope. Thanks for chatting, Mark. I'm going to go back to watching sports with my dad. I came home for Easter, so that was nice.
Nice. Enjoy.
All right. See you later.
Thanks, Will. And a hearty happy Easter to everyone and Good Friday to everyone. Of course, as I mentioned to our Michigan friend, and I hope he doesn't take too much offense if he watches us here at the Voice of College Football, our Michigan friend there on Twitter. Yes. Most monumental weekend of our year in history. So let's tee it up here at the Voice of College Football. We got Chris on the line. Chris.
Hey, Mark.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am doing just fine. What's on your mind tonight?
I was just gonna maybe ask you. We've already kind of talked about it, but I have a couple things I just wanted to ask you. I guess. I don't know if you got that. I sent you an email. I talked a little bit about what I did as I went back, and I was just kind of curious to find out for myself how effective, I guess, the BCS was. And people might not want to, I understand if they don't want to go back to it, it might be something we shouldn't do, but it seemed like it worked out. If we would have had it like within the CFP, at least as far as I could tell anyway, it would have worked pretty good for like 5 of the 9 years. So I took that and I applied it to the 16 seasons we had the BCS, and that would have been about 9 out of 16. And it looked like it was probably about right. I don't know if you looked into that or not.
I did not, but I do think, Chris, that many of our heated discussions or debates over the years have been a little bit misconstrued, because I would have had little issue with the BCS had there been more playoff spots. So it was less about the BCS formula. It was more about, because we only had 2 spots, that they were typically awarded to the teams or a team that I did not believe earned it as much as another team or 2.
Right. Well, I understood your maybe your argument a little bit, but I guess my point isn't really about that right now. It's just that and this is from, I guess, my angle. So, if it's the wrong angle, I guess you'll understand that. But it just seemed like if we would have had it, and it would have had to been maybe done in a way that I would have, liked. There's no guarantee they would have necessarily done it the way I would have wanted it. But like I said, it looked like over the 9 years that we've had the playoff, I think it would have worked. And what I mean, as far as working, it wouldn't, it's not that it wouldn't have worked the other 4 times, but it seems like it would have worked, pretty well, those 5 out of 9. So you can make your own conclusion about what that means. But
so Chris, do you mind if I go into your email and post it on the screen?
No, go ahead. If you want, that's fine. I don't know if you have it on there or not, but it was something I mailed to you.
I will show you here in a minute. I will show everyone. I should say, let me find it. Here we go. So, what do we got here? You've got this conference realignment. That's what I've gone to here. I thought we were talking about the BCS.
Well, you can talk about either one, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know which part you want to.
I want to stay on topic here. So I'm looking at your conference realignment email.
Well, I wouldn't mind talking about that either, but if it's kind of your show, so.
Well, let's go there since I got it, and I don't know where the BCS.
Well, I already told you what the other one said, so I guess there's not a whole lot of reason to go back to the other one anyway.
Well, we could look at the matchups, but okay, we've got the American Athletic Conference. You believe that these teams, mostly out of Conference USA, should be invited?
Well, no, those are the ones actually that are good, that are headed there. That really the realignment isn't necessarily something that I mean, that's what's happening, I guess, is what that's all about.
Oh,
that's not really. I mean, it's less about me and more about what I think should. I mean, you can make it about me if you want, but it's more about what's actually kind of going on.
Well,
I'm not like throwing things to the. I'm trying to follow what's happening.
Well, you are in this first section, but in the second section, you've got a Big East conference, so that's not happening.
Well, there is a Big East conference. You might not really know about it, but yeah, there is.
In football?
Yeah, Connecticut. They're in the Big East. I think they're the only member in the Big East that's in FBS. I think there might be a couple other teams. Doesn't Villanova? Am I wrong? Do they not have a team? I thought
Connecticut's an independent team.
Well, I understand that, Mark, but they're in the Big East.
No, they're independent.
No, they're in the Big East. They were. I think what it was they were invited to go to the American Athletic because they had 11 members and not to go there, and so they're in the Big East. And I don't want to really argue with you about it because that's where they are.
All right, there is no Big East.
Yes, there is.
Football.
Yes, there is. Yeah, they have one member. They have one member in the FBS that's Connecticut. So
you were telling me a second ago that you were dealing in reality, but you got a Big East conference that's got.
Oh, there is a Big East conference.
Penn State, Rutgers, Maryland being invited, Notre Dame, and West Virginia.
Yeah, it's all perspective. It's not something that's been cast in motion or anything. No.
I have no issue with this, Chris. This is the way you would like to see it. The issue is that you're pretending that this is like happening.
I'm not really pretending anything, Mark. I kind of don't really appreciate that, but whatever. I mean, no. If you want to understand what I'm trying to do, and it's not really something even I'm doing. I mean, I'm just I'm trying to put teams where I think they fit better than geographically, I guess. Yeah, I guess I'm taking them out of the Big Ten. Maybe they don't want to go. I mean, that might be a fair.
Go.
Well, okay. Well, they might not want to go. Maybe they don't. But that's what I'm doing, though. Is I'm putting teams that I think are better suited to the Big East in the Big East is what I'm doing.
Yeah, we are playing fantasy land, and there's nothing wrong with that. This is I don't disagree with you.
Okay.
But this is not happening. I put together 6 12-team conferences that look similar, not exact. They're different, but they're similar. They're very similar in concept. That I built a Big East that has most of this involved that you've got laid out right there.
Well, I didn't. I'm not really. Again, you can make it about me if you want. I'm just trying to do what I think is the right thing. And yeah, I guess if you want to get technical with it, I guess I don't know how long those contracts are in place or if they're even negotiable, but I'm doing what I think is the best thing for the landscape, I guess you could call it, the landscape of college football. And yeah, it involves those Big Ten schools.
What is going to have to happen for this to be accomplished?
Well, you have to break their contract. I understand that, but
no, that's you're depending on 48 schools to do things that they don't want to do. You would have to have a commissioner of college football to make this happen.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Oh, I think so.
No.
Chris, you are asking 50 schools to do things that don't make sense for them financially.
What are you talking about? Maybe
I'm talking about Penn State's not leaving the Big Ten to join some mythical.
Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not tomorrow, but maybe in 2 years or 3 years or.
They just signed a $1 billion television deal. Penn State does not want to leave the Big Ten, nor does Maryland want to leave the Big Ten.
Well, at any rate, I just thought you might want to look at it and see if you thought it was a good idea or not. I'm not.
Oh, I think it's a great idea.
Okay.
But it's not going to happen unless, again, I will put this condition on it. If we one day have a college football commissioner or a governing body that can make decisions for the good of all of college football, then this sort of thing has a chance.
Well, there you go. I mean, you just basically, in so many words, you said it might not be a bad thing.
Oh, I don't think it's bad. I think it's a good thing.
Okay, well,
I want geographic borders to mean something and us to go back to the fabric of college football and what it was 3 decades ago.
well, that's not exactly what I'm trying to do, but if you want to look at it that way, I guess that's okay. But I'm just trying to put teams in a place I think they want to. If you want to know what I'm actually trying to do,
Yeah.
put teams where I think they would like to be.
No.
Yeah.
They don't want to be.
Well, I don't know that you can. Do you speak directly for Penn State? I mean, come on.
Yes, I'll speak. I will officially speak for Penn State right now. Yes. Penn State fans out there, our buddy Joey that contributed a few minutes ago, I will speak for Penn State. They do not want to be in some fantasy Big East
Well,
conference.
it's not fantasy, Mark. Tell everybody, just for favors. You only told them about 2 or 3. Tell them the whole thing and tell them. I mean, let them at least know what I said so they know what's there. I mean, tell them what I'm proposing.
You're
'Cause, you know, okay. Army, Cincinnati, East Carolina, Temple, Penn State, Rutgers, Maryland, Notre Dame, West Virginia, Connecticut,
Yep.
and then Louisville and Boston College.
Yep. There's only one school on that list that Penn State wants to play on a regular basis, and there's only one other school that they really want to play. That in terms of it helping them, there's only one school that really does anything for them, and that's Notre Dame. Now you got a collection of schools like West Virginia. Of course, they're playing West Virginia this year. Rutgers, Maryland, that they're okay with.
There's 2 that's already there.
Those schools are not helping them.
Well,
Penn State doesn't make all the money it makes because they play Rutgers and Maryland in the Big Ten. Their TV contract is worth as much money as it is because they play Ohio State and Michigan every year, and then some other teams like Michigan State and some other teams in the Big Ten West.
right. Okay. Oh, and then the other part would be, this is kind of I don't know if you saw that part or not, but and that's kind of why I want to bring it up. We're talking about expansion, right? I mean, isn't that part of what we're trying to do, is expand to get to like what? I don't even know what the result would be if it's going to stop at 16. Somebody said 18. I don't know. I take it all the way to 24 because I figured, well, if they're just going to keep expanding, I'll take it up to 24. Why not? And you know what that could do? I mean, you can tell me what you think of it again. After I send West Virginia, then I send Houston to the Big 12. So the Big 12 still has 10. And then I'm just putting them together with the SEC. That's 24 teams right there. You don't have to worry about like who to add, who not to add. You just put them together and then you get your 24. And then Big East with the Atlantic Coast. The Big 10 would merge with the Pac-12. You can tell me if you like it or not. Go ahead. After they would have to replace those 3 teams, they'd add Colorado is who I put there in the Big 10. You can laugh about it if you want, Mark. I think it's a good idea. Go ahead and laugh. I don't care. I think
I'm not laughing at your organization of this from a geographic standpoint, but you need to understand in the real world.
Well, I'm working from the real world. I'm not. This is
moves just about everything.
Okay.
And this won't happen unless
Okay.
you've got some kind of NFL type commissioner that says, well, this is what's good for college football. And then you got to get a lot of buy-in that's like beyond moving mountains. Yeah, Penn State, we're going to move you into this conference with East Carolina and Temple and Army. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I'm just grabbing Penn State as one example.
Connecticut just won an NCAA championship. I mean, that isn't fantasy.
So Penn State wants to play them in football every year.
Well, I'm guessing it probably would include a basketball, But I guess I'm living in fantasy land. I guess Connecticut didn't really win. I guess I just dreamt that up.
The UConn basketball game is insignificant.
No.
Yes, it is.
No.
Yes, it is.
No.
Nobody watches that on TV.
Nobody watches the NCAA basketball.
And UConn play.
That's earth-shattering news to me. I didn't know that nobody watched the game, but I'm glad you told me.
Not talking about a national championship game. When has Penn State ever played anything close to a national championship game in basketball? Okay, back to football. Yeah, I want to see the conversation with the president of Penn State University to tell them your TV contract has now gone from $90 million to $13 million a year because you're not playing anyone. Nobody is going to watch your games.
I don't know how we would watch. That's not something I really look into that closely, but
well, that's what matters.
Well, I don't know where they get those figures, but it's like,
think about this. 30 years ago, Penn State joined the Big Ten. Why?
Oh, I don't know for sure.
You're taking them back 30 years to try to undo something that they decided to do 30 years ago because they knew it would benefit their athletic department and their university.
I'm not taking anybody back. I don't really think that's a fair criticism. No, I don't think so.
You are Penn State.
No, I don't think so.
If I go into this further, I would find more.
Okay, well, as far as, because I did do the math, so at least give me the credit for that part. I added up all the proficiency, and what I got was it's just right. It's just barely under 50%. So, I mean, which that might not sound very good, but
I don't know what that means.
Well, come on, you can't tell me you don't understand what that means. That's like saying it's like averaging it all out, and it's saying they're about where they would expect to be as a power conference. They'd be right in the middle of it.
Oh, they would win. Okay.
Yeah.
50% means you are the average conference.
Well, 8-8. Yeah, no, it's.
Well, Chris, when you're bringing all 144 schools into it, you've watered down all the conferences to be really awful.
They'd be sixth. I'm telling you, they'd be sixth out of what?
Yes, that's because you've watered all these conferences down to be awful.
It's not true. That's not fair.
Absolutely, it's fair.
It's not.
If you're going to take a Power 5 conference and you're going to add like 6 group of 5 teams, you're going to water that conference down to be pretty bad.
Well, come on, Mark, be fair. That's not really what I'm doing. At least be fair.
That's the result of this.
No, I don't think
that's
so.
Your aim.
I just told you they'd be right at 50%. They'd be sixth. Yeah, they'd be sixth like out of 12.
Yes. Do you understand what I'm telling you?
That's right in the middle. That's not bad. That's not good. That's right in the middle.
It's in the middle of your new configuration. It's not the middle of current college.
No, it is. It is in the middle. That's what you think I'm lying to you? That's right in the middle.
Your new configuration.
If the middle is bad, then I guess it's bad. I don't know that I consider middle to be bad.
That's not the point.
Well, what is the point then?
Okay, if you take the Big Ten, let's say, and whatever you rate the Big Ten to be, whatever that is, and you add, let's say we added 6 teams from the MAC that are geographically in Big Ten territory. If we added them to the Big Ten would be substantially worse.
I know.
That's the point I'm making.
I'm not doing that, though. That's not a fair criticism. That's not what I'm doing.
You are. You're taking Penn State and you're putting them in a league with a bunch of subpar programs.
No, not really.
Yes, you are.
No. Name a few. Name the ones that are terrible, that are so bad.
East Carolina, Temple, Connecticut. Do I need to continue? Army. Let me pull up the list.
Pretty good basketball. I don't know.
I don't care about basketball, number one. Number two, and these conference moves aren't made based on basketball. We know that they're made on football.
It's not everything's about football. It might be in your mind.
Chris, I'm trying to bring you into the real world.
So am I.
Now, again, if we want to play fantasy, I'm on board with you. But if you're talking about the real world, this is not going to happen.
I try to live in the real world.
Doesn't want to be in this conference.
I didn't just as a lark. I mean, I actually tried to do what I thought was the right thing.
I know geographic, and I credit you. I don't think you're understanding me. I like what you've done here as a
Actually, the one thing I know I can win the argument about is if they expand to 24, I don't think there's a better way to do it for anybody. I mean, so you can use whatever argument you want to use, but if they want to expand to 24, I think the way I'm doing it is the best way to do it.
When you throw out they, I don't know who you're talking about. They. Anybody. Doesn't matter. Show me another one that works better, and you're not going to find it. Chris, if you're following along, this is going to be the last point I'm going to make here, and then I'll give you the final say. This is going to be the last point I'm going to make here. If any conference expands to 24,
Sure.
let's say that's the Big Ten or the SEC.
Any of them.
Spoiler alert here, Chris. They're not adding East Carolina, Temple, Cincinnati, and Army to get to 24. They're not staying at home. They're going to Oregon or Washington or Clemson or Florida. They're bringing in big football brands. That's how they're expanding. Did you see what the Big Ten just did last summer?
I just told you it would be. I don't know if you heard.
Schools because they're located in Ohio. They went to Los Angeles to get 2 schools. Why?
You're obviously not listening.
Money.
No, you're obviously not listening to me because I told you.
You're not listening.
No, you're not
listening. This is how college football works. When the Big Ten decided to expand, what did they do? They went to Los Angeles. They didn't add 2 MAC teams. They didn't add East Carolina and Cincinnati.
So after I do all this reconfiguration, then when I put the Big Ten and the Pac-12 together, I'm doing something different from what they're doing. I mean, I'm going against what they did. I didn't know that, Mark. I appreciate you telling me.
Well, you come.
I put the Pac-12 and the Big, and I told you that before, and it should be in that email. I told you that I'm putting them together. So it doesn't go against anything that they've already done. And you can tell me it's a bad idea, whatever. I don't care about that part, but.
It absolutely goes against what you've done.
No, it doesn't. It goes
geographic, which again, it makes sense based on what your goals are.
No, it makes sense on what's happening. It makes sense on what's happening. It doesn't make sense on what my goals are.
No, it does not make sense on what's happening.
Sure,
this is not happening. None of this is happening. So how does that make sense based on what's happening?
Well, if they want to expand to 24, you don't think the Pac-12 and the Big Ten would be a good mix to put to 24?
Okay.
You just told me that. That's fine. If it's not a better way to do it, then.
Big Ten is not forging a merge with the Pac-12. They are taking teams from the Pac-12.
What's the difference? There's no difference. That's the same thing.
Absolutely, there's a difference.
There's no difference.
There's no difference between the Big Ten and the Pac-12 merging and the Big Ten just saying, USC, UCLA, come on board.
I'll agree. If they don't let those 3 teams go to the Big East, then it's a different thing. But if they do, then merging with the Pac-12 is the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing.
I made a statement earlier tonight. I said, when there is a debate where the other person has a great point,
I do,
but I disagree with it, still a great point, then I can have that conversation. But if somebody like not making any sense, then that's when I'm out.
The other thing, and you didn't let me say it. It's Brigham Young would be the team I would put in the Pac-12 to replace Colorado. So
okay, sure.
And I'm sure that's a terrible idea, but that's what I would do.
Well, they just decided to join.
I know, but I'm telling you that's not the right thing. So, and like I said, I think the way I do it is the best way to do it. So. If you have a difference of opinion, that's fine, but that doesn't mean that my idea is a bad idea, though.
I'm going to say this one more time, and then I'm not going to say anything else. And my point is, if your intent and your purpose in all this is to make geographic conferences, then you have succeeded. Otherwise,
more than that,
what's going on in the real world? This
I
is not
told you that the Big East. You can say it's a sorry-ass conference if you want. I just told you it's middle.
It's
in the middle. No, it's not. It's
yes,
not.
It is.
No, it's not. There's no way you can tell me that. I told you what they were.
I just did, and it's obvious.
Sixth isn't terrible. Maybe 10th or 11th.
Your configuration of conferences.
I'm not configuring it. I'm just telling you that's what it would be. They'd be 6th out of 12.
I mean that they are 6th out of 12.
Yeah.
Your conferences, and I just explained to you why that is the conclusion you came to.
Well, some people would say top 6s. That's probably where you need to be in the top 6s to get priority status. So if they're in the top 6, I don't know how that makes them a bad conference, but whatever. Go ahead and tell me it is. Top 6, I mean.
And explained about 14 different ways.
I'm just telling you it's 6th. If you can say 6th is terrible, that's fine. It's just what it is. 6th out of 12. All right.
Thank you for being here.
All right, thanks.
Have a good night.
You too.
99 out of 100 times I explain to people where I think they've erred, and I do it in a very nice and polite way, but every so often, it just gets to be a little much. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. We got our buddy Larry here.
Hey, Mark, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, good. Just listening to my rival football team commissioner. So
Yes.
that was entertaining, to say the least.
Maybe.
So yeah, I don't think I see what Chris did. He, like you said, I saw the same thing. He just took the regionality, which we all know is not going to happen.
And I was just trying to form the framework to the conversation that there's nothing wrong with doing that. I did that like 3 or 4 years ago and posted the video and said, if I'm commissioner of college football, this is how I would divide the conferences to make them fair and equitable, but also to keep the geographic integrity. But I didn't say this is going to happen tomorrow, so we can have that discussion. That's fine. But don't tell me that this is happening now.
Yeah, you can't. A team like Ohio State, and you take somebody that doesn't have anywhere near the same resources as an Ohio State, and that's what it's about: TV money, resources. You can't stick those teams in with teams that just have way too many resources.
You're not telling Penn State that they got to go play in a conference with Temple, East Carolina, Army, UConn. They want no part of that.
Yeah, I was just, when we were when he was talking about that stuff, I was just thinking, what if they wouldn't have thrown the T in the Boston Harbor? I mean, let's go back and redraw lines for regions. Anyway, what I was going to call about was it's about the Pac-12. So I keep going back to the inventory. I don't see the Big Ten, ACC, SEC kicking off at 10:30. I just don't see it, or
You're
even
right.
10 o'clock.
Yes.
So you've got FS1, you've got ESPN, and you've got ESPN2, and they have a contract with the Mountain West, and I think the Sky gets a couple of games somewhere. I keep hearing people, saying, "Oh, the CW, this and that," and it's Fox, ESPN, they don't need the Pac-12, but ad revenue, it's just one of those. It's Mountain West doesn't draw the numbers. There's not a lot of cost return.
Sure.
So I really think I don't see how the Pac-12 isn't going to be involved with Fox and ESPN. I can't see how they're not going to.
So first of all, I hope so. Secondly, if we extend on your point here, Larry, if the Pac-12 gets back to 12 teams, as we expect, so they're going to have, during conference play, they're going to have 6 games a week. And let's say they get the late night spot on ESPN, which I hope they do, because I want that game. I want to see a Pac-12 game because it's 19 times out of 20 the best game in that slot, more so than maybe rarely Boise State, Fresno State might be a really good game. But otherwise, yes, the Pac-12 game is the game to have. And then, like you say, I'm trying to think, what does Fox show at? They show a Pac-12 game at 10:30 at night, right? Yeah.
FS1 has shown quite a bit of the Pac-12. FS1 has.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. I don't see how they're not going to be involved.
And I think they would want a double header for their own network every Saturday, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know what Fox is going to do, because you've got NBC and CBS is going to be running a Big Ten game. Fox is going to have the big noon. And then Fox is going to, are they going to have a late Big Ten game as well?
Fox late, meaning like an 8 o'clock game? Eastern?
Like would be like a 7 Eastern game. A 6-7 Eastern.
Yeah, I think isn't NBC going to have that window? Like CBS, I think it goes Fox at noon, then CBS the 3:30.
Okay.
Once they clear the SEC next season, and then NBC is supposed to do the primetime Big Ten game. I believe.
Okay.
That's how it's supposed to go.
And then I know Fox has some Big 12. They bought 30%. They have 30% of that. So I think they could stick, they could stick a 7 p.m. Eastern time in there for the Big 12. That is, or ACC's just ESPN only. I don't know. When I look at the math, I just don't see how ESPN with those two channels are not going to be involved with the Pac-12.
Yeah, you wouldn't think so. They're fine with ESPN2 airing those kind of games, but not ESPN.
No, ESPN2 is, they show, if I'm not mistaken, it's been Pac-12 on ESPN2 like almost every week.
So I don't know if you can see the screen, Larry, but I'm pulling up TV ratings from last season, and I'm going to try to find these 10:30 windows. So the last week of the season was Washington State ESPN game, 10:30 at night, did 2.3 million views, which is a solid showing.
Yeah, the Apple Cup's a good showing. I think it didn't get a great rating. And I think it was Stanford, Utah. It was the 10:30, and I think it got like 1.7. But I mean, Stanford was like 3-6 or something at that point.
Sure.
And it still pulled 1 million.
Wyoming Fresno State was the FS1 late night game.
And what did that pull?
That did 260,000.
Yeah, see, that's
yeah.
I don't know. There's just not a lot being said. Supply and demand. I just don't see how the PAC's not involved. I don't know if they're going to get the money. And so I think they're just at a stalemate. They're butting heads, in my opinion.
The week before, Larry, Utah, Oregon, ESPN late night, 10:30 Eastern, 2.54 million. That was a really good game, Utah, Oregon.
Right. And you were talking about if they cut, if the game isn't watched all the way through, is that peak or is that continuous?
Oh, these figures that we're seeing here?
Yeah.
That's a great question because there is peak viewers and then there's total viewers. I'm guessing that this is a total viewer look at it, which I think people need to watch. I know in regular TV, like an hour show, they need to watch a quarter of it. So I don't know how they rate that with games.
Right. And then another thing, and it seems very strange to me, and I have nothing against the Big 12, but their average since 2015, their viewership, it almost tripled this last coming year when they were getting ready for it just seemed rather weird to me that, these teams were averaging anywhere from 750 to 1.5 million a week, just playing each other. And then all of a sudden, I mean, I can see why TCU would have jumped.
Yeah.
But like, it just seemed weird to me that they all of a sudden were jumping to 2 to 3 million views a week. They literally tripled in viewership of their averages. And I know the population didn't grow that much. And I know the SEC and Big Ten folks weren't turning off their games.
Mm-hmm.
So it seemed really strange to me. And I could see maybe they picked up some of the BYU, Cincinnati, Houston viewers, because they're going to be joining that conference. But did that seem strange to you? Did you ever see the numbers?
I did not see those numbers. So what you're telling me seems very strange because it just doesn't make any sense for any such reason, because you would think maybe if Texas and Oklahoma had phenomenal seasons and they met in the Big 12 championship game, 11-1, 11-1, maybe that would bolster enormous viewership, but I can't come up with any other scenario. Like you say, TCU did really well this year, but I'm sure there were other years where Oklahoma State or Baylor did much better than they typically do because they had a banner type season.
Right. Yeah, it just seems strange because I watched the D4 before this last season. He did a video on all the conferences, ACC, Pac-12, Big 12, with games not including USC, UCLA, Oklahoma, Texas, what channels they were on, and the average viewers and what channel. And you could see, and you had a pretty good baseline for what the averages were. And then this last year, after I saw the reports, like you even had it in, you did a video on some of the biggest games in the Big 12, and TCU was up there, Texas, Oklahoma, but you had some other teams that were hitting the 3 million mark that have never hit the 3 million mark.
Yes.
Like they've just never hit it, and they all of a sudden have been hitting it. You're like, that's very strange. So it just seemed peculiar to me, is all.
Yeah, I can't really answer that one, but it does seem odd.
Yeah. But yeah, I just think the Pac-12's, I don't see how ESPN and Fox aren't involved somehow with the, at least one game each a week. That's just my guess.
Yeah, ESPN's not into showing, a Mountain West game on ESPN every week at 10 Eastern, 10:30 Eastern. When, and I don't know what their strategy is for their late night college football show and Sports Center in terms of, people can be watching these highlights whenever they want versus that used to be like destination television to try to, get a look at the wrap up of the day. But, I still know that millions of people want to watch, the big wrap up of the day. And if they've got a garbage game in front of that, they're not helping themselves.
Right. So, I mean, you've got to agree. The Big Ten is not kicking off that late to fill a window for Fox. The Big 12, ACC, SEC are not kicking off at 10 o'clock Eastern time to fill a window. Yeah. Because I don't know about you, but I don't know many fans that want to show up to a game at 10 o'clock at night for a kickoff.
No, they're not kicking off. The Big Ten's never kicked off at that kind of, I don't think anybody's kicked off at that kind of time unless they desperately needed viewership. I know that there's been some 9 o'clock kickoffs. Miami, Texas A&M kicked off rather late this past year because it was an ESPN game. But anyway, after like a 6 o'clock game. But, my point was going to be, had the Big Ten, swallowed up half the Pac-12, that might be different. But with only 2 teams, I think there might be an occasional UCLA Minnesota game on the Big Ten network or maybe on Fox.
When they're playing at UCLA or USC.
But there's only going to be so many of those.
Yeah, because Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State are going to say we're not kicking off at 10 o'clock at night.
No.
So
and the networks won't want that game at 10 o'clock at night.
No, let's be honest, though, the Big Ten gets some really good views. And like you said, the demographic is 35 to 65. Most 60-year-olds are pretty much in their pajamas at 10 and shutting off the lights. So it's not good for TV revenue.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it all makes sense.
All right. Well, I just thought I'd give you a call and talk about that. So.
I appreciate it, Larry. Have a good night.
All right. You too.
All right. Good to hear from Larry. Appreciate everybody being here at the Voice of College Football. Did want to get to what was alluded to before, and that's the report in ESPN, Pete Thamel tonight concerning Pac-12 deal that could be pushed to the spring or summer. A couple things Larry said reminded me of some content I would like to post here because you guys seem to enjoy the ratings breakdown, and we did each conference and then we did a compilation, and it was an overview of the conferences and the biggest games and really totaled all the games as much as we could among the conferences. We would love to see ratings out of the ACC, which I know are premature because there's a 5-year window given to any startup network. And for the ACC, they just started in 2019. But for the SEC network, where are these ratings? I can't find them anywhere, and I would love to see the SEC TV ratings. They've got the Big Ten TV ratings out, and the SEC started in 2014. So there should be SEC network TV ratings. Okay. FAML reports the timeline for the Pac-12's upcoming television deal is coming into focus. Sources told ESPN no deal is expected for a few more months. Pac-12 CEO is set to meet next week. Sources told ESPN not to expect a deal. Okay, the timeline for the Pac-12 television deal, according to sources, is sometime later this spring or this summer. Recent comments from league presidents suggested the deal was perhaps coming sooner. And just like I talked about last night, and I've produced a few videos on the comments made by Arizona President Bobby Robbins and also Arizona State President Michael Crow. They've been the two guys that have talked the most. So they've said things that I think I've interpreted fairly accurately, or if I have not interpreted accurately, then they are poor communicators, where they have basically said, we're committed to the Pac-12. We believe we're going to get a good deal. But then they've said, there are always talks going on, and if this happens or that happens or doesn't happen, then the league could be in trouble. Or you could see certain schools, Utah in particular. Those guys said it. I didn't. We had Tony Altamore on last night. He cleared some things up, but at the same time, I'm not. Tony's the guy that tracks all this. He's on top of it. He's got the historical perspective, the academic perspective, and everything in line. But there are a few things out there that I do think don't sound the best for the Pac-12. And maybe their presidents don't know how to communicate and present their viewpoint. Anyway, those timelines appear too optimistic. The Pac-12 remains engaged with multiple media partners, streaming services, etc. Television deal is directly tied to the fate and future of the league, as the conference is seeking a stabilizing deal in the wake of USC-UCLA leaving. One more year on its current deal, as ESPN and Fox still hold the primary rights through the 23 season. So Pac-12 safe for this year. Timeline of the Pac-12 has been a matter of intrigue, has left an intense focus on what caliber of deal the Pac-12 can find. The timeline of the deal is currently expected, appears to be in line with how the Big Ten's timeline unfolded. Big Ten deal was announced in August, nearly a year from when the new one would come into fruition. So there was really nothing in terms of the nuts and bolts that was different than anything else we already knew, except that sources now say it's going to be months, meaning May, June at the earliest, and August probably more of a realistic forecast at this point. So how about that? So again, Larry brought to mind some TV ratings data I would like to present and break down. Larry, thank you so much for the contribution. We appreciate you. Thanks for being here. We also, this reminds me, let's not forget, folks, that we have a dear friend who we lost. So let's not forget. Of course, we lost Chris earlier this week. If you've not seen a number of the offerings, both here and on Chris's channel, please check them out. They streamed the funeral services on Golden Blue Dude. And also, we did a show that I popped in on for 20-25 minutes last night. That was a tremendous show. I caught most of it, but I jumped in early. So I thank Joey for saying, hey, Mark, we want you here. We want you here at the beginning. And so I thank you for that, Joey. And we got to reminisce. The show that we did the other night here was phenomenal. based on all of your participation. So thank you so much, everyone, for your contribution. I wanted to make what we did on Wednesday night, which was a kind of a last second, even though I was aware of the situation the entire day and worked through it, which I didn't want to do, and was able to just, you guys all know, unfortunately have talked to probably everybody on here has lost somebody significant in their life at some point. And again, I'm not playing this up like Chris and I were best buddies, because we weren't, but we did text on a regular basis and talked obviously directly right here that you guys got to see. And then we shut off the live stream and we talked some more. So the point I was making is my goal the other night was twofold. Number one was to celebrate his life, to honor Chris, to talk about his spirit, his personality, his flavor, his good-heartedness, all those things, and to share stories, and for everyone to be able to just grieve and vent. And, I experienced this with my mom. It was one of the strangest weekends I've ever experienced, because my brother came to town. One of my best friends flew up from Florida. My other best friend was here. My two kids, whom I dearly miss and have not, for the first time in their lives, I've not been right close to either them living with me or right down the street, like within earshot, for the first time in their lives, from July to now. They were back. They came back. And of course, the reason I bring that up is because, everybody mourns differently. So for me, that weekend was like very odd, because I was mourning my mom, and we're talking about the last weekend of January. I was mourning my mom. And so there were some just extremely difficult times that weekend. And then to see my kids break down was, wow. Any of you who have kids know that if something affects your kids, then wow. But then it was also like, it was a celebration too at the same time. And it was great. And we shared stories, and just to hear people talk about her was just amazing. So relating that to GBD, just, it was this combination of mourning and sadness and shock, but with also wanting to celebrate him. So that was one portion of what we did the other night. That's what I was hoping. And it blew me away, way past anything that I could have imagined in terms of your response and your stories and your honoring Chris. But from a practical standpoint, my main goal was the GoFundMe. So I hope we did good work. I believe we did, thanks to all of you. And so we just pushed and pushed and pushed, and you guys didn't need much pushing. You guys jumped ahead and did an amazing job. And at the time that I pulled this up, there we go, 17,000 plus for the GoFundMe. So again, that's available for all of you. And I believe it's been posted in the chat a few times. So please consider donating, and to honor Chris, and more so even than that, for as important as that is, he's in a good place. It's those 4 children that he unfortunately leaves behind. So consider that, please. And Larry, again, thank you so much for the super chat. All right. So again, nothing new on the media rights front except delayed. Program rankings. Yeah, we kind of got into this with Will. And really what struck me was just the Ohio State, Michigan. You could debate that all day. But hey, Michigan fans, I know I've been hard on you at times tonight, but you've got bragging rights. You've got nothing to defend whatsoever. You can just say, we got 2 rings from the last 2 seasons. We got 2 wins in the game. 2 impressive wins. Up north, War Dogs. Hey, Mark, you did ratings by conferences. Can you do a series on TV networks? Say one would be Fox. How does Fox do at noon, 4, 7, etc.? Same thing. So, yeah, there is a number of ways to slice this, and I have thought about all these things. So we could do at noon. How does Fox do against the ESPN, ESPN2, ABC? That's basically who's in play at noon. Obviously, ESPNU showing games in the Big Ten Network, which the Big Ten Network actually does pretty well considering they're showing like the 4th, 5th, maybe not even that high best games of the week in the Big Ten. They actually do fairly well. Yeah, so we could do it there because we'd be able to see the numbers and say, you know what, Fox won the noon window every week or 10 out of 12 or whatever it is. We'd have to give that a lot of context, though, because obviously Fox is aiming for that noon window. The ESPN noon window is usually a decent game. You know, you get a lot of LSU, Mississippi State. You get a lot of Florida, Ole Miss at noon on ESPN. Good SEC games, but usually 2 mid-tiers or they're struggling. And so it's not, you know, obviously CBS has taken the best SEC game and sometimes they show 2, but usually the one at 3:30. And then ESPN usually comes in with the second game, which is going to be that 7 o'clock ESPN game. And then there might be another one in there as well. So that's usually that noon window on ESPN is typically like the 3rd or 4th best SEC game. So that's a tough comparison to make. And then ABC, they're all over the place. They show a Big Ten game. They show a Big 12 game, ACC. They grab whatever is one of ABC's best games, probably about the 3rd best game for ABC on the day. Obviously, the primetime game's the best game, then the 3:30, then the noon game typically. And you'll get a lot of Cincinnati UCF type games at noon on ABC. So again, slicing at 3:30 is kind of difficult because that's going to be where CBS, they're going to win almost all those 3:30 games. You're going to see Fox win almost all the noon games, CBS almost all the 3:30 to 4 o'clock games. Then the 7 o'clock game, of course, ABC, but they show some strange matchups from time to time. There are some odd ones. You know, you'll see some Clemson, Boston College matchups on ABC, you know, so they don't always hit quite right, but that's a great idea. And again, I've thought of all these things in terms of matching them up and in that way. But I also like this 10:30 window because that's what's on the table right now. That's what's on the table with the Pac-12 is this 10:30 window. And to see how did those Pac-12 games do? You know, we can't expect them to rate with those other games. And that's partially because of the time. It's partially because showing Utah and Oregon, for as great as that is not Ohio State and Penn State at 3:30 in the afternoon on ABC or noon on Fox. It's not the same game. It's Utah and Oregon's 2.5 million views, and Ohio State and Penn State was like 8.5 million. But that's all interesting stuff for sure. People wanted me to go back 5 years. People wanted me to say, you know, look at the best teams. So if we took 2022 all by itself and said, I'm just going to make this up, but it's probably going to be fairly close. Ohio State had the most viewership. Michigan second. Alabama third. Georgia 4. Penn State 5. Tennessee 6. I don't know when we're going to hit a team outside the SEC and the Big Ten. TCU, Clemson, USC, somebody probably jumps in there at 7, 8, 9, somewhere like that. But then we have to determine, okay, just because Ohio State got the most views in 2022. And I don't know that they did. That would be my guess. Ohio State or Michigan. I got to think maybe Bama. Bama had a huge game against LSU. Big numbers. The Tennessee game, big numbers. Texas A&M, big numbers. Bama. And their out-of-conference game was, who did they play out-of-conference in their big game last year? Texas, huge numbers. So it might have been Bama. It's either Bama, Georgia, Ohio State, or Michigan with the best numbers. But then you can't just say because Alabama had the best viewership for 2022 that they always have the best viewership, because that's obviously the needles moved by who they played and what time slot. But that's got to be fairly consistent. I got to think if you take any one of those top 6 or 7 teams in the country, that it's pretty close every year. That Ohio State has this many Fox games at noon and this many ABC games prime time, and it's pretty close to that same. And then in Ohio State or Michigan, probably get 2 slots on the Big Ten Network. And actually, the Ohio State-Rutgers game was the most watched game on the Big Ten Network. There were better games, much better games on the Big Ten Network. Iowa-Illinois was an important game on the Big Ten Network. It got a third of the audience that Ohio State and Rutgers got on the Big Ten Network. So that shows you again, brand is huge. So we could do a million videos on that. And if, as long as you guys watch them and you seem to enjoy them, we maybe I should get back on that path. But I want to get on this path too of the my goodness, looking at these and again, don't look at the ranking. The ranking's not complete. I'm just taking notes, just working on it. We're just working on it. So maybe let's see. Maybe we do like a Tuesday or Wednesday night next week. Maybe I release this on Monday, and Wednesday or Thursday night, we do a live stream and we break down our program rankings. Maybe we go that route. So we do appreciate all of you being here at the Voice of College Football. It's always a good time with all of you. Great to see you. Great to have you here. At times, I think, man, we probably need to nail down some specific times to do these call-in shows, because I understand it's a bit of a wild card. We have been pretty consistent with these Friday nights, although I've done a lot of 6 o'clock ones. I could not make it at 6 this week. That just was not possible based on a lot of things I needed to get done. And also, please consider that we've got a Florida State show every week. Miami, Ohio State, Michigan, Nebraska, Iowa, USC, Oklahoma, and West Virginia. Did I miss somebody? And so those are at set times. So for me to commit myself to a specific time to do these call-in shows is going to be, and we do a Big Ten show every Monday at 6 and a SEC show every Tuesday at noon Eastern time. So I'm obligated to like 13 shows a week. So to pin down exactly when we're going to do the call-in shows is sometimes a bit difficult. So keep that in mind. But I know that it would probably do better for viewership if we did that. Oh, here we go. Here we go. The real MVP's here. What's going on, sir?
Not much. How about you, Mark?
I am doing well.
Well, you said something earlier that caused me
Oh, boy.
a
Okay.
little upset. You said I disappointed you, Mark.
Okay. Well, I was tongue in cheek to a certain extent. Yes, to a large extent, tongue in cheek. I'm just saying that I turned the network over to you and Jeffrey and Will and Jackson, yes. I turned the network over to you guys, and I was generally listening to it. I'm watching some TV. I got you guys on my phone, and I'm hearing this nonsense about playoff selections, and I'm like, wow, I just thought I raised these boys a little bit better than that.
What do you mean by nonsense?
Okay, how are we No, so I get your point, and you seem to all be in agreement. So I'm fighting against all of you that there should just be some, like, you guys talk about it like it just kind of automatically happens, like we've got the Almighty here on earth to say, you know what, this season Alabama's the best team, Georgia's the second best team, Ohio State's the third best team, and Michigan's the fourth best team. And then we got, expanded playoff we got to do. So we got Tennessee, they're the fifth best. And then that we just know this. So those are the teams we should select because we know who the 12 best teams are. And so why are we giving berths and buys to these conference champions? Because we know, well, we don't know.
You're right. We don't know for 100% sure, but we've got a pretty good hunch that certain teams are just better than other teams.
And that's how we should select the playoffs?
That's how the seeding should be selected, not the playoffs itself.
And
I advocated for
this? Who's doing this?
The committee.
Really? We want to give them that kind of power.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that.
Sports is subjective. College sports are subjective, unlike professional sports.
I think there's a reason we have conferences. The one point where I backed you last night was, I think Jeffrey was saying, well, Alabama was the best team. The point he was making that Georgia was the best team, but Alabama and Ohio State were the only two teams that could knock them off. I don't think that's unreasonable to think that. Like, I don't think he's crazy. I think he's probably right. I tend to agree with him. But you were making the point that just because we think Alabama is just that good, that we're going to elevate them into a playoff or give them a certain seeding when they lost to Tennessee. They lost to LSU, and that does break ties, and we've got to honor the results on the field.
Now, that's where me and Jeffrey differ. I said the results are the most important factor when it comes to determining seeding. Jeffrey kind of wanted to dismiss the results.
Like, how do you do that? Well, then is he going to do that, but somebody else isn't? Like, who's doing this? Like, he's getting
a committee of 12 people.
But what if the committee says, you know what, Tennessee was better. They won the game and they're better. So we think they're better.
They should be ranked better than Alabama. I would have Tennessee ahead of Alabama.
Not from what I heard.
No, not from Jeffrey. He didn't think so, but I was giving him some pushback. Mark, I've been consistently on here telling you that you are the only person from what that I've seen that has had Tennessee above Alabama. And I have ripped the polls that have said Alabama is ahead of Tennessee despite the game on the field.
Yeah, they play in the same conference.
Yeah, they played each other.
Yeah, well, that's most important. But also there's validity for me that the rest of their conference schedule was pretty similar.
Right.
Now, I would have to ask Jeffrey this question. What if there was only one more pass completed against Alabama last year? Just one more. And that was Haynes King to, I think, Shamar Stewart, Texas A&M in the end zone for a touchdown to win the game. Because that's what was going on in that game, was Texas A&M was throwing the ball in the end zone to win the game in the final seconds. Was Alabama, are they any different of a team? No. But you know what? They would have been 9-3. So do we dismiss that too and say, you know what? But that's only one play different in a whole season.
Hey, you ain't gonna get any argument out of me. I am a firm believer that the results on the field should matter above all else. So you ain't gonna get any argument out of me. The point I was making during the process was, instead of having the top 4 seeds be conference championships, you should have the top 4 seeds be what you believe are the 4 best teams.
Well, we've got a problem because we don't have the omnipotent one to tell us that. And I don't trust anyone outside of myself. And I don't expect everyone else to trust me.
I get that, Mark, but
I don't want a 13-team committee telling me who the 4 best teams are. They've already been doing that. But now they're going to give them buys because, so if they think Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, and Michigan are the 4 best teams, we're going to have 3 teams with SEC with buys, and we're going to have a Michigan team, and then that's it.
Yeah, what's the problem with that?
Just because the problem is they think it. I don't care what they think, and we shouldn't be subjected to what they think.
But you get what you wanted. You get what you wanted. Every conference would be represented in that playoff structure. Still, they would get guaranteed playoff spots.
No,
I think that would be less egregious than Utah being a 4 seed.
If we have to have buys, then we will give them to the conference champions.
Why?
Because they earned it.
Yeah, but what if these conferences are nowhere near as good as the SEC and Big Ten? If your conference championship is not a good team, then that conference championship shouldn't be rewarded as being an elite team.
Well, we have very few results to back that up. Now, I'm one that says that the results show that the SEC is the best conference, and I think that those results are valid, but they're still pretty thin. It's not like a Major League Baseball schedule. We're talking about like 4 games telling us who the best conference is.
I mean, I think it's a little bit more than that, but
yeah.
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that for a general consistency of who about is the 4 best teams. I don't see anybody having a real problem with Georgia, Michigan, and Ohio State getting buys last year. I mean, maybe I'm wrong with that, but I think it would be more egregious if Utah got a bye just because they won the Pac-12 championship.
Yeah, it would have been between them and Clemson.
Right. Kansas State would have been out.
Oh, that's right. So you would have had, okay, gotcha. Yeah, I keep forgetting that they actually won the thing.
Right. So that's going to be another layer of confusion for the casual fan, by the way.
Yes. They're going to be like, didn't we watch this TCU team win all of its games the whole season? Then all of a sudden, they're not because I even slip up on that every so often. Oh yeah, Kansas State won them.
Yeah, and they're going to be ranked in the final poll 3rd in the country, but they're going to be the 5 seed.
Okay.
Well, I mean, that to me isn't very fair, bud.
What would you have done the previous season?
With what?
You had a Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, Cincinnati playoff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just put those teams as your bye teams.
Cincinnati?
Yeah.
Oh, suddenly, wait a minute. They were the 4th best team in the country?
If the people believe they were the 4th best team, the ranking has them as the 4th best team at the end of the year, put them at 4. Now, they're going to get blown out probably. But if the committee comes to the conclusion that they're the 4th best team, put them at 4, and they'll get exposed probably by an Ohio State team.
I can't believe that you guys just are okay with just rolling this responsibility over to this committee to, at least now the structure hems them in to being reasonable and equitable. You're just giving them carte blanche to do whatever they want.
I mean, they've got to still abide by some guidelines. They still got to give every conference champion a seat at the table, plus a group of 5 conference champion. So they don't have almighty power. There still has to be some seating.
Okay, let's say you were on the committee. And how many teams last year in the SEC do you believe were better than Utah?
4.
Okay. So those 4 teams from the SEC will be in the field, and Utah probably is, well, what are they going to be ranked or seeded?
They
Yeah,
would
I'm
be
sure.
an 11 seed or a 10 seed.
Something like that. Okay. And they're going to have 4 SEC teams in front. They're probably going to have 3 Big Ten teams in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
And you came to this conclusion based on
The results on the field and what I've processed as the results on the field. It's subjective.
that. Yeah, it is. And and I've given you this power temporarily, but you're okay with relinquishing that and giving it to 13 people because you're comfortable with them determining.
I think it would be a more fair process than Utah getting the 4th seed. That's why I'm comfortable with it.
No, I think it's fair to earn a championship.
Yeah, but that implies these championships are somewhat created equally, and they're just not.
Well, they're not. No,
So
they're
what?
not.
So why are the seedings somewhat equal? They shouldn't be.
The seedings are, but the number of teams that will be qualifying for this playoff won't be.
Right. But I'm just talking about the conference champions.
The SEC is going to be overrepresented, and the Big Ten will be.
See, I don't like that framing of it's overrepresented. It's not overrepresented. They just happen to be better.
Yeah, they have been.
Right, and they
And
probably
that's
will
why
be
I'm
going
okay
forward.
with them getting selected, but I still want the champion of. I want there to be a payoff for winning a championship.
There will be. They still can get in the playoff. They would get in. It would be like in March Madness. Every champion, unless of transition rules, gets in the tournament. Now, are they all seeded the exact same? No. A lot of them are 16, 15, 14 seeds. But you know what? They get to play the same. It's more fair because they have to play the same amount of games as the best team.
Yeah, and they all played 30 games. They didn't play 12.
Right, but they have significantly more teams.
Yeah, and there are more results to judge the teams.
Right.
There's not, okay, Alabama won a non-conference game against Texas. Okay. There's a string of games to take Michigan State in basketball and say, wow, okay, they played Kansas, they played Duke, they played Valparaiso, they played UCLA, they played whomever, and we got this string of 7 or 8 non-conference games that is really strong. Plus, they played in this level of conference. Therefore, we're making this evaluation.
Right, but that's still a subjective opinion. Not
Alabama. Oh man, shoot! I brought up the Texas A&M game. What about the Texas game? Shoot, Alabama could have been 8-4 easily. And everybody out there that knows and listens knows that I think Alabama was one of the very best teams, and they could have won the 2 games that they lost. They lost those on the last play too. So it's a very, riding the fence kind of season for Nick Saban. But again, you've got all those metrics and all those results to judge those basketball teams. And here we're talking about how great Alabama was last year, and their one non-conference opportunity, they got pretty fortunate and beat a decent Texas team. They didn't go to Ann Arbor and win. They beat Texas, who was the 20th best team in maybe 25.
Right. I mean, I think Alabama would get in the playoffs, but I don't think they would get a bye. I think there was 4 teams better than them, or should be ranked ahead of them. Better versus who deserves it more is different.
You probably thought they were the 5th best team, though, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you would have gone with the 2 in the SEC and the 2 in the Big Ten.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think TCU, I mean, no offense to them, but I just...
Yeah, you're cutting it down the middle to say, I'm judging and evaluating these teams based on how I think they... But if there is a result that I can go to, then I'm going to, even if... And I don't know this, but even if you thought Alabama was better than Tennessee, well, you're saying they're both really good and they played. and Tennessee won the game. So, and had the same 11-2 record or 10-2 record for the regular season. So we're going to give them the nod. Sure.
That's exactly the way I would do it.
Yeah.
Like last year, why was Alabama put in the Sugar Bowl and Tennessee wasn't? Tennessee should have been in that Sugar Bowl. They played. Tennessee won the game. They deserved the higher bowl game.
Yeah.
It should be that simple.
Sure.
So, but so you want it to where each conference champion, if there is a bye, I understand you don't like byes.
Yeah.
But they should all get a bye because they won their conference championship. It's not just the fact that they're represented.
Yep.
You want them to have the same chance to win the playoffs.
Yep.
So if we let's say it was a 16-team playoff, would you be more likely to do the way I'm doing it?
Well, if we went 16, then yeah, so the conference champions get no advantage from a bye standpoint, but I want a seedings advantage.
Why?
Because they won a conference.
Oh my!
You have to award that in some way.
They get a trophy. That's their award.
They get a trophy, but we also acknowledge that they won a conference, therefore they earned it.
Yeah, they did. They get a trophy.
They earned the bye, or they earned the higher seed.
See, I don't like that framing. They earned it.
I don't like this mythical. Yeah, we think Alabama's they lost 2 games and they came within 1 play of losing 2 more, but they're Alabama. We know they're really talented and have a bunch of 5 stars, so give them a 5 seed. I don't like that.
Why is that less valid than Utah being a 4 seed?
Because mine is objective and it is a data point. There is a conference championship. That is a fact. You guys aren't stating facts to me. You're stating a bunch of opinions that are kind of smattered around.
Well, so
don't hold up in every case.
So let's say we do it your way, and the 5 seed is an Ohio State or Georgia, one of those top teams.
Yep.
That happens not to win their conference, and 10 years down the road, the 4 seed's 0-10 or 1-9. Then would you be willing to change it?
No, probably not.
So okay. I mean, you're right to do it. Your opinion.
What did that hurt anything? If you're right on this, and I'm not, and I think you're leading me in that direction to show that, oh, that's the reason I'm doing it. But that's not that's not going to move me off of that point, or that what I believe is just because I don't think the ends justify the means. It's just simply you earned that championship. Like I'm not going to do that. That's like us evaluating. This happens every season, and you know it, that we're looking at potential playoff teams, and there's all sorts of past history that people debate and bring up to justify teams or to put them down and say, well, they've never been any good and they've never won a playoff game and they lose their playoff games by 30 points, so they shouldn't. Well, no, it's a new season.
Right. I agree with you 100%. If you have a team, Tulane was a great example of this last year. The season before, they were 2-10?
Yeah.
And then that shouldn't matter at all for that last year's season. But people were bringing that up. It's like, well, that's irrelevant.
Yeah. Is it in my mind as well when Oklahoma shows up at the playoff that they might get whacked again? Yeah, it is. But I don't want that to impact where they're seated.
It shouldn't impact where each season should be based on its own merits.
Yes.
But I just believe that the SEC and the Big Ten are just so much better than the Big 12, the ACC, and the Pac-12, that rewarding or giving buys to their conferences are just going to lead to tons of blowouts and ain't going to be entertaining football to watch.
But, okay, Darrell, this is, again, another point where your logic is a little bit flawed. You believe that the SEC is this much better, okay? What's that based on? It's based on past results.
That's correct.
So but you're telling me that we should award these seedings and do everything based on the merits of this season.
Right. But it should be based on, I'm projecting forward because we haven't actually had a 12-team playoff yet of what it's going to be, is my point.
And what I'm saying is basically what we have every year is that the SEC has the best wins against the best teams in the other conferences. And I'm talking about just in the regular season that leads us to the playoff. But it's not, there aren't that many games played, and it's not that decisive because there's just aren't enough games to make it decisive. So we get into the playoff and people are expecting the SEC to succeed, and that's justified based on past results. But we can't let that infiltrate the seedings and the selection of the teams.
I mean, I guess I can somewhat agree with that, but
what I guess I'm saying is, yes, the SEC is earning this kind of respect every year, but I think you're holding to that, but you're also allowing, what's happened the last 10 years to also skew that even more.
Maybe, but I would hope if, let's say, the Big 12 has two elite teams that go not undefeated, but one goes undefeated and one loses only at one game, then I would hope both those teams would get a bye. I'm not advocating it just because it's the SEC. It's just what I think would be best for the sport overall.
Yeah.
That it should be the seeding should be based on merit, but the conference champion should also get in.
Larry is letting us know, of course, this is a good point, that the conference champion already plays one extra game.
Yes, but that only means that the winner only gets a bye, not the loser. And the loser will probably make the playoffs anyway.
Yeah, depending.
So should the loser get a bye?
No, because they didn't earn it. The champion earned the bye.
So last year, even though Georgia, we believe, was much better than a Utah last year, they shouldn't have gotten a bye, but Utah should have.
Oh, 21.
Yeah, 21.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. But when they play on the field, and I believe Utah, they didn't play, but Georgia would have probably destroyed Utah. I mean, I just don't think that's a good look for the sport as a whole. I think that leads to the more reaching out. I think people are going to say it's more regional than before. And
if we take your approach across the board, why not wipe out all the conference championships and just select the 12 best teams? And if this trajectory continues, as you may expect, let's say 10 years from now, that's 7 SEC teams. We won't make it that ridiculous. 6 SEC teams and 4 Big Ten teams and 2 teams from some other conferences.
Hey, if that happens to be the case, then that goes for it. I was trying to get some compromise between my side of the situation and your side of it, but you're speaking my language, Mark. If it happens to be 7 SEC teams, 6 SEC teams, then that's what it should be. Would it really surprise anybody that understands where this is potentially headed and where it stands right now that in 10 years from now, the SEC's, that I don't know if the playoff selection committee is going to select this, but it would be reasonable to think that the 12 best teams in the country are Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, LSU, Texas, and Oklahoma, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, and USC, and then Clemson and Oregon. Hey, that sounds like a pretty good playoff, Mark. I would enjoy every game of that playoff. 6-4-1-1. Hey, if that happens to be representative of what the teams did on the football field that season, then why not? I can't. What if the Clemson, Florida State? Not that far off of what it is right now. Right. Well, I mean, what if a Clemson or a Florida State joined the SEC, and Oregon and Washington joined the Big Ten? Yeah. I mean, we're going to get to the point where these these three conferences with the Pac-12, Big 12, and ACC are so dwindled down that they should just be considered Group of Five status, in my opinion, in terms of their play on the field. But Mark, that's all I got for you tonight. Thank you for having me on, and glad you got your audio issues fixed.
Yes, I have no idea what happened and why the mic is not working tonight. That's kind of strange, but thanks for all of you and your patience. Thanks to Real.
No problem.
Yes, we had audio issues right out of the gate, and we've got two more callers, and we
Hello?
got Wrist Strainer. What's going on?
Hey man, nothing much. I'll be really quick with it. I'm on a hurry, but I'm a degenerate gambler, and all last season I bet against Georgia, hoping to cash in one of the bets that they were
Yeah.
going to lose.
Yeah.
And let's just say I'm under like 2K. I'm under $2,000 right now.
Oh, you bet
Georgia
them
went
straight.
undefeated.
You bet the other team straight
Yeah,
against the money line.
against the money line.
Ooh, that Ohio State game must have killed you.
It really
That must
did.
have hurt. Yeah.
I couldn't believe when they went 14-0. I'll be honest with you. I thought they were going to lose against Michigan, and they didn't.
Well, they didn't play Michigan.
You're
talking about Georgia, just last season.
Yes.
Yeah, they played Ohio State in the semifinal.
All right, I probably have the teams mixed up.
They played
I'm a
Michigan the year
casual.
before.
I've been betting on them for quite a while, though.
You've been
Who do you
betting
think's going to go
against.
undefeated this season?
What are the odds?
Yeah, what are the odds that someone goes undefeated again
Oh,
so
that's
I can make
someone.
my
I
money
thought you
back?
were asking about Georgia. Well, there's usually, I would say, if we went through college football recent times, that most seasons somebody goes undefeated. I'd say maybe half the time, 5 out of 10 years, somebody goes undefeated. And then the other years, obviously, there's like 1 or 2 teams, 3 teams that go with 1 loss.
Do you think Alabama's going to go undefeated?
If anybody's going to go undefeated, I would go Alabama or Michigan. That would be no. I'd go Georgia, Michigan, then Alabama. Those would be my 3 that I'd look to first.
All right, man. Well, it's great. Thank you. I know it was a short and sweet.
I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, there's a comment right there that says, "You a goofy, loofy, doofy, moofy ass dude."
Yeah, I don't know what we're going for. He didn't say ass. He said, ah. Maybe he didn't want to put ass. I don't know. But
maybe it just threw me off. I'm looking at the comment and it just
I
threw
really
me
don't know
off.
what that means, but I don't know if he's talking about me or who I was talking to. That's a Luschim Martinspangberg. I botched that for sure, I'm sure, but there you go. All right, well, we appreciate you calling. Call back anytime.
Yes, sir. Have a great night, my man.
You too. All right. Yes, thank you so much for the contribution there. You a goofy, loofy, doofy, moofy, dude. And I believe we have come to the end of the line here at the Voice of College Football. And our guy Jordan jumping in here right at the tail end. 2018 Clemson nearly lost to Syracuse and beat Bama by 28 points. College football is a strange sport. So, yes, let's do understand that we got to go by the results. And the best team usually wins. Usually means whatever, 90-some%. But there are quite a few games throughout the year where... Now, there are certain games that we argue on here and people come on and say, well, that team lost to them, but they're still better. And there's no reasonable way to figure that out, meaning Bama and LSU. One of them went 9-3. The other went 10-2 in the regular season. They played in Death Valley. LSU won by the final play of the game. I think Bama's a better team, but LSU won on the field. Bama had a 1-game better record, but they did win by 1 point at Texas and barely beat Texas A&M. So that's one of those debatables. Okay. In Jordan's example right there. Yeah, if Chase Bryce does not complete a 4th down pass, Syracuse wins that game. And nobody's going to argue that Syracuse was better than Clemson, but they were on that day, or they were one play away from being better that day. Or 2 years earlier, James Conner goes off and Pitt beats Clemson 43-42. The would-be and soon-to-be national champion Clemson Tigers lost to a 7-5, yes, 7-5, maybe 8-4, 7-5 Pitt team. I think that Pitt team lost to Northwestern in the Pinstripe Bowl. If I got my years straight on that one, I believe. So anyway, that's an example of saying the better team didn't win. And if Pitt fans want to argue and say, we were the better team, we won the game. Yes, you were the better team that day. You won it fair and square. But the rest of the results in the season clearly show us, and all you'd have to do is connect the dots in the ACC to say, well, Clemson beat and Pitt lost to ... So none of the rest of the season backs up the Pitt win that day. Purdue pummeled Ohio State in 2018. Was Purdue better? No, it wasn't even close. But on that night, it wasn't even close that Purdue was better than Ohio State. Ohio State was better than Iowa in 2017. They lost by 31 points to Iowa. Were they better? Yes, they play in the same conference against the same opponents, and every other score would tell you that Ohio State was far better than both of those teams, but they weren't on that night. So anytime, again, somebody comes to me and says, so-and-so is better than so-and-so, even though they lost to them, but the result, all the other results don't necessarily paint a clear picture, I say, you really don't have much to go on. But when it's that, or the season before, of course, 2017, Clemson did lose to Syracuse. They were far better than Syracuse. Would that Syracuse team go 5-7? Clemson was a playoff team. But on that night, there you go. Good stuff. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football, and maybe I've set up Jordan for some arguments in the chat. I don't necessarily believe Jordan's arguing with me on those points. I don't think. I think I'm right there with him. All right. Good to see everybody. And catch Jordan and Tiger Paw Craven every Thursday night at 9 o'clock Eastern on our Clemson show. It's a live stream with Jordan and with Tiger Paw Craven. They do an outstanding job on the Clemson channel. And please join them there. And yeah, that about wraps it up for Friday night. We will be back at a time to be determined sometime late in the afternoon to discuss spring football with Auburn and NC State hitting the field tomorrow afternoon. Right here at the Voice of College Football. Be looking out for those notifications, and we will see you on Saturday. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.